We all have someone in our lives who is really hard on their clothing. In my case, it is my little boy who wears out the right knee of almost all of his pants. So today, I'm going to show you how to mend knitwear. If you're going to be mending something, and you're going to be using a patch like I am, then you need a patch that matches the kind of fabric that it is. I didn't have any sweatpants handy, but I did have this stretchy set of knit pants that are thin, much thinner than sweatpants. So what I did is I cut a slice off of that, and I will be using that as the patch doubled. The thing that you need to do when you are going to patch something is secure the patch where you want it to be. See what's going on here? Some people like to clean up the middle, and I will do a little bit of that today. It'll just make the eventual process of securing it a little bit easier. Now, I am going to be using a technique that is inspired by the Japanese mending art of Sashiko. It is a very forgiving technique, and I highly recommend it, even if you are a novice sewist. Now, you're going to want needles and something like this. I like to put one hand down inside the pants so that I don't accidentally pin this to the back of the pants. What I'll do is I will try to keep everything as flat as possible. As I do this, I'm gonna not just do the edges, but I'll also try to get in the middle as well, and you'll see why later. So Sashiko, as I mentioned, is the art of a Japanese mending art that doesn't just patch something. It is also basically creating new fabric using thread and a combination of the old fabric and the new. Now, do not think that what I am doing today is Sashiko. Actual Sashiko is beautiful, and they make beautiful patterns and such, beautiful geometric patterns, and what I will be doing is going to be a lot more organic than that, which is a fancy way of saying I do not feel like graphing out stuff, so it is, that's why I say it is Sashiko inspired. The other nice thing about Sashiko is it doesn't require an embroidery hoop. I've got the patch secure. It's not going to get away from me or stretch out. So now I just need needle and thread. Sorry about the background noise. We've got construction going on in the area. This is thread I actually reclaimed from a sheet that was torn, from a fitted sheet. And yeah, so I've just been using it for mending projects and such, because that is appropriate. I like to do what is called visible mending, which means that I really try to highlight whatever I'm doing when I mend. So I put one hand inside the pants so that I can feel where the needle is going. Try not to stick yourself with these. By the way, if you are concerned about poking yourself, just use safety pins. Also totally fine. So pull through until pull the thread through until you can just barely see the end. And to secure the thread, basically do a back stitch. So you go down through all the layers and back up as close to, or preferably directly through, the first hole that you made there. I guess it's the second hole, really. The point is, you're making a stitch keep that thread from getting away. Now, if you pull too hard, it is still going to go away. So I'm going to go back in the hole that we came out of and make a line up that way to start securing all of this. Get a little knot, just untie it. That happens a lot when you're sewing. It'll happen less if you shorten your thread by doubling it up a little longer. All you need to do here is make your line, stitches in a direction. I'm going to go up and down. You could go crisscross, you can make diamond patterns. There's a lot you can do here, but I'm kind of feeling like I'm just gonna follow these lines more or less and see what comes of it. First set of stitches, in fact the first line in any direction when you're mending is always the most difficult because nothing except the pins are holding the fabric down. You know, it wants to go all over the place. Once you get it tucked down a little bit, it's a lot easier. Oh, as you're sewing, make sure that you are not pulling too tightly on the thread or you'll cause puckering and distortions. So periodically I like to go back and stretch out the fabric. And this knit is very stretchy, and that can work for you or against you. And some people, when they are putting on a patch, will go all the way around an edge first. And I will come back eventually and get this raw edge tacked down, but I like to actually get the fabric secured before I do that. A lot of times, even though I do have a sewing machine, I like to perform my mending by hand because it gives me a better sense of what the fabric is doing, better understanding of how the fibers are interacting. And this is sewing, everybody. So you just go in and out. It's very simplest expression. Over and under, over and under. One piece of cloth to another. Which is one of the simplest technologies that we as humans have ever come up with. But also one of the most valuable. Every single piece of clothing that you're wearing owes its existence to this process. Needle and thread, sewing, over, under, over, under. We've made it a little fancier, but that's what it comes back down to. All right, I'm going to change direction now. I have finished the first line here, and I'll basically repeat it all the way down. Now you remember that there's a hole here in the middle, so I'll show you what it looks like on the inside. As I sew around, I want to make sure that I'm capturing these raw edges on the inside. And so I will do the full length of this patch. In No, technically speaking, it's not necessary, but I like the look of a uniform pattern. What I'm doing now is going down towards the raw edge. Actually, I don't need this needle anymore, or this pin rather. Actually, I will move it over here. It can help hold this part down. So you're doing this, just be very sure, very careful that you are not sewing the top side of the pants to the bottom side of the pants, because unraveling something that you have worked so hard to sew because you have actually sewn the pants shut is very frustrating and annoying, because then you know that when you're done you have to do it again, but properly. So I have a raw edge. I like to do sort of this whip stitch down it. There are a lot of fancy stitches that you can do or not, but this is how I do it, and I do recommend, unless you're using some sort of a t-shirt material that will not unbind, or like a felt that will not ravel, secure your raw edges. I don't need to do that on this folded side because they're not raw or cut, but this side and this opposite side, I will definitely be sewing those edges to secure them.
And there you go, one raw edge down, and you just do a running stitch across the edge, across the lines. I'm going to be going mostly on the line edges and the line middles for the rest of this, and you repeat until done. Here we go. All right, we've been working on it for a while now. This is how it looks after a few more rows. As you can see, I take the pins out as I make progress, and here's how it's looking on the inside. When you run out of thread, you end by stitching twice through one stitch, basically the same way that you start a thread, and then you start the new one the same way you started at the beginning. Go under the fabric for a little, and then make a stitch, and stitch through the same stitch again. It's just basically the same thing, in and out, over and under, like we've been doing the whole time. If you really want to, you could also just tie a knot in your thread and hide that under the fabric, but I found that not as secure as stitching twice like we're doing here, so I wouldn't actually recommend that, but you can if you want to. This is your project, you make the rules. And for the record, I have no idea why my camera decided to switch to square instead of rectangular recording, but it did, and here we are. Anyway, that's not important. When you're finished sewing the patch onto the pants, finish that raw edge, and then you are totally done. The very, very, very last step is going to be what we call burying the thread. Go through the last stitch 2 or even 3 times if you're kind of paranoid like I am about stitches coming loose, and then run the thread up under the raw edge or under the selvage. Somewhere under the fabric is the point, so that it will be both hidden and secure, and that it will not come out. In this case, it's a little bit stubborn when it's going in, but that's kind of good because it means that that thread will be going nowhere. Cut the tail off if there is any, and now we can take a look at our finished patch. Let's smooth it out for you here. And there we have it. Nice striped patch and really secure. I'll show you what it looks like on the inside as well. There we have it, nice and secure. The goal here is just to extend the life of the garment, and I think this will do the trick. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Make, Mend, Grow, where we're leaning in on the mending. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this content, and I'll see you next time on Make, Mend, Grow.